as he said, I'm Tara Rohde, Senior Sales Director at SiriusXM in Chicago. And I have the pleasure of interviewing and kind of speaking with the lovely and talented Megan Lang. So, hi, Megan.
Hi, Tara. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So we're really excited to be here today. I feel like, Jess did a really great job of setting up the brand love that Heinz has and all of the creative successes that we've seen along the way. So I think before we dive in, we really wanted to set the stage and what that means and play a quick global Heinz video to get everyone kind of ingrained and excited for what we're going to be talking about. So I guess to kind of kick it off then, so with a brand as big and as global as Heinz, I can imagine you and your team see a lot of ideas. So what really guides the work that you say yes to?
That is a big question. And, transparently, there's a lot that guides what we say yes to. But I think if I had to kind of distill it to maybe the simplest thing or sort of like step zero in our process, it might sound simple and obvious to you, but I think it's really important. You really have to find your brand point of view, and it needs to be grounded in a brand truth. And that's something on Heinz that we talk a lot about and have talked a lot about over the last couple of years. It's interesting, as of about 2 years ago, if you looked at how Heinz was showing up globally, we didn't have a consistent brand point of view, and we didn't have a consistent brand truth that we were bringing to life in the world. If you looked at how Heinz was showing up in the US versus Canada versus the UK versus China, we looked like a bit of a different brand. And so we came together and we sort of set off on this quest to figure out what is our point of view on Heinz and how will that guide everything that we do. And what was interesting for us as we kind of went on that journey with several of our agency partners is we realized we actually don't have to invent anything. We don't have to contrive anything. The answer was sort of sitting right in front of us. And I think that's because we were really looking for the brand truth and for consumer truth. And what we found as we were, meeting with consumers, we did ethnography across 6 or 7 different markets across the globe. We found this really simple truth that was the same no matter where you went across the globe, which is that people irrationally love this brand. Jess talked about it a little bit this morning, but you hear stories from celebrities, but you also hear stories from, if you talk to any Uber driver in any city you're in any country across the globe, you find these crazy stories of how much people love the brand, the lengths that they'll go to get Heinz, the crazy things that they'll do when they don't have Heinz. It just kind of appeared to us as this ubiquitous truth. And so we used that to sort of create a global creative platform and a creative strategy that we refer to internally as the fact that Heinz is made with and inspires irrational love. And so that's the creative strategy that we leverage, and it's now become the inspiration for a lot of the work that we do, but also a gatekeeper in a good way, I think, for the work that we say yes to. There was an analogy, I'm looking at you, Danielle, somebody used the other week with me, which I will never forget, which is, strategy should be like your bouncer at the club. And you're going to see a lot of ideas that you love, but you have to let your strategy kind of be the bouncer and be what ultimately decides whether or not you let something in or not. So that's been what's guiding what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to. I think I don't know if we can get the videos to work, but I have just a 60-second global anthem that I can share with you that just brings to life how we launched that platform globally last year. So if it works, great. If not, we can keep rolling.
Great.
It's coming.
All right.
Okay. That'll be the second video.
I can't see it.
I can't see it either. You don't want to hear me sing? Okay, this is the first video.
This was the Global Heinz journey, right? And kind of recapping all the great things.
Yes. This was actually a video, and I promise I won't voice it over for the full 2 minutes, but this is a video that played several weeks ago at CAGNY, which is Consumer Analyst Group of New York. For those who don't know, it's one of the largest CPG investor conferences, so we use that as an opportunity to tell a bit of the story we've been on Global Heinz. But maybe we'll keep moving.
Should we keep moving?
I think we'll keep moving.
It'd be great to have some sound. So we're going to keep filling the sound here. So, Megan, I think what you've just shared is great, especially around all this irrational love. And I know many marketers, including all of us here in this room, you know, it's great what you're talking about, but we'd love to know those steps that you take to get to great work, because it doesn't just happen overnight. So if you could kind of fill in a little bit around your strategies and how you do that.
Sure. And again, I think these are going to sound really simple and maybe a little bit obvious, but I think they're really important as we think about, like, what is the secret sauce to getting to great work on Heinz. And I think one of the first things that we think about that's really important with ourselves and with our agency partners is sitting down and agreeing on what success looks like. And, you know, you're not going to get to great work if you can't actually sit down with your partners and really know what you're all after. And if you're not after the same thing, you're never going to get there. And what I don't mean by this is I don't mean getting to like a litany of KPIs on a brief. It's not that. But just finding a really simple, compelling kind of North Star that you can use in partnership with your agencies or whomever you're working with, that sort of guides the collective of what you push go on or not. And so several years ago, and I think Jess teed this up a little bit this morning, but what we agreed on as a brand and as a company is we want to hack culture and earn attention. So for Heinz to be successful, we felt like the work that we do needs to get into the mainstream press. It needs to be work that shows up in dinner party conversations or is work that is like so ubiquitous that even your mom or your dad texts you. I don't know if that's happened to anybody else, but they saw something out in the world. That's a good signal that you've really hacked culture and earned attention, which I think is important for Heinz and for a lot of our portfolio because we have these really iconic brands. Jess mentioned this morning, you know, many of them are icons in pop culture, but to really reignite that love and also to maintain your legacy over time, I think it's really important to earn attention and sort of punch above your weight. So that's what we agreed on, really simple, with many of our partners, and that's, you know, inspired a lot of the work that we've done over the past several years. Jess alluded to an example earlier this morning, and we do have another video on this. Sorry, guys, it might not play. Oh, we can try again. I'll tee it up quickly while you guys are having it load. You know, Jess mentioned the ketchup and seemingly ranch phenomena with Taylor Swift, and that was a good example where you know, we couldn't believe, or maybe we could believe, that this tweet about what Taylor Swift was dipping her, you know, chicken tender in went viral because that's how irrational her fans are. And we felt like we have to jump on this moment. I sort of felt like Over My Dead Body is another brand going to win this moment if it's not Heinz. And so we moved really quickly to figure out how do we kind of hack this moment and earn attention. And so if the video works, maybe we'll play that. Okay, awesome.
I can't help it if I'm poppin', see them watch like it's outrageous how this flavor got 'em shook like you can't play me, bring me in or try and tame me. Gosh, it feels fabulous. Work it out. I hit it back with a brand new style. Bring it up into the floor, get wild. We turning up all the way on the down like work it out. Come and show me what you're all about. I'ma shout it real loud and proud. Baby, I'm flying. FABULOUS every day like if you want it, come get it, no disrespect. Hold up. I'm the cause of everybody's concern. You're making them heads turn like, woo. Gosh, I feel fabulous. Work it out. I hit it back with a brand new style. Bring it up into the floor, get wild. We turning up all the way on the down. Work it out. Come and show me what you're all about. I'ma shout it real loud and proud. Baby, I'm flying.
Okay, so that was the Cagney video. So we're going to do a little bit of video catch up, but I'm glad you guys could see that. I think we'll skip the next one, and it's on YouTube, so you all can look it up if you want to see the global anthem that helped us launch the new campaign and the platform of Irrational Love that I was referring to. And then the next video is the Taylor Swift one, which I think might be a fun one to play, if you don't mind. After this one, yeah.
After this one.
Got a little backlog here of videos. There we go. Thank you.
Heinz has the newest condiment mashup. This time it's ketchup and ranch, and they've decided to call it Cranch.
What kind of monster would make something like Cranch?
When it goes on sale, we'll see how long it lasts.
Why not?
The rumored relationship between pop star Taylor Swift and NFL tight end Travis Kelce has taken over the internet.
This tweet went viral. A fan posted Taylor Swift was eating a piece of chicken with ketchup and seemingly ranch.
I think the internet right now is going insane.
Heinz Ketchup, they have created a new sauce. It's called Ketchup and Seemingly Ranch. Seemingly Ranch.
One viral Taylor tweet is inspiring an unexpected new product.
Did you see that Heinz literally released a ketchup and ranch?
And it was a record turnaround time.
You don't think they can't create it in 2 days?
Yes, they can. Heinz already has Ketchup and Seemingly Ranch ads up in New York.
This is good.
This is good.
Ketchup and ranch, banger shit.
Now, don't be too concerned by the word seemingly.
We should sell this and make some money. We are in our Ketchup and Seemingly Ranch era. The fastest marketing turnaround I think I've ever seen.
I made Seemingly Ranch, fully embroidered sweatshirts.
Wow, I actually, that was incredible.
Yeah, huge shout out to my team in this corner, who I think lost sleep for about 3 weeks while that was happening, but worth it.
And I also just loved watching everyone's reactions in the audience, the smiles, and just like the authenticity that you guys are driving with this irrational love. I'll bring it back to SiriusXM for just a minute and thinking about how we create connections with our listeners, brands, and fans, really kind of rooted in trust and mutual respect, and kind of shift that back to what you guys are doing at Kraft Heinz, right? So you have such an iconic and robust portfolio. How are you creating authentic, kind of creative strategies for each of your brands, but also keeping them fresh and new, knowing they've been around for a long time? How do you continue to make them relevant?
Sure. Yeah, I think I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but as we think about, or as I think about authenticity for a brand, any given brand, it'll sound simple, but I think it's really important for brands to just be honest and to be truthful. And by that, I mean really tapping into real consumer truths or real cultural truths. Sometimes as marketers, it's tempting to sort of force it a little bit, or maybe even fabricate it. But I think in order for things to be authentic for the consumer, it has to come from a real consumer and cultural truth. And then as you think about the role that your brand is going to play, I think for a brand to be authentic, you have to be honest about who you are as a brand and honestly what you are as a product. We talk a lot about like, okay, does it make sense for Heinz to be in this moment or any given brand to be in this moment or not? And I think sometimes you have to take a step back and just be honest about who you are and what you are. We're a condiment brand. We're a ketchup company. And so, I don't know that Heinz is going to go save the world in every instance, but does Heinz make sense as a brand to, for example, create a hot dog pact between hot dog bun companies and, as the campaign called it, Big Wiener and Big Bun, to get the same number of hot dogs and hot dog buns in, the same number in the same pack, i.e. they used to come in packs of 8 and 10 and they never matched up. that really frustrated consumers. So Heinz did something about it. But that made sense for Heinz, right? Because we're a ketchup brand and we're on every single hot dog. So I think sometimes you just have to be realistic about like who your brand is, what you are, and what sort of conversations or cultural moments make sense for your brand to take part in. So I think that's kind of like part one of authenticity. And then I think you asked like, okay, so how do you keep it fresh or how do you keep it new?
Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of different steps we take to try and do that. But one sort of principle or mindset that we follow on Heinz and on many of our brands all the time is this notion of, or this mentality of go, then grow. We talk about it all the time. My team is probably going to be laughing here in the audience because they're sick of hearing it. But it's this idea that, you know, at Heinz we talk a lot about speed. But what can happen sometimes in the creative process is you see an idea, and we've all done this probably. You say to your agency partner, well, blow it out, or show me that it has legs. And what that can do sometimes in the creative process is it just creates all these meetings on meetings, and it can add weeks to the creative process. It can even add months to the creative process, and it can really get in the way of speed. And so a mentality that we've taken on is this idea of go then grow, which is like a minimum viable product approach. We talk a lot about that with innovation, not so much with creativity. But what we've tried to do is get the minimum out there in the world to earn attention, then see if it sticks, see what part of it sticks, and then you can kind of figure out what you want to scale. And so we've gotten comfortable with that over the past several years. I think one really good example, I can't take credit for this. This was a team before me, but I think it's a really good example. During COVID, the team at the time realized and observed through social listening and, you know, just the news that people kind of picked up this old classic pastime of puzzles. I don't know if any of you remember doing puzzles during COVID. And so the team at the time sort of thought, okay, Heinz is famous for its slow pouring ketchup. So what if we created the world's slowest puzzle? And so they created an all red, 570 pieces, Heinz Pantone red puzzle with identical, H-shaped pieces that took people forever to put together. But from idea to execution, I think they did it in about 4 or 5 weeks. And they did a minimum viable run in 3 markets. And what happened is it took off. Late Night was talking about it, the world was talking about it, and eventually they scaled to 15 markets very quickly. But I think, honestly, if we had done the opposite approach, if the team had started with, oh, this is a global idea, we got to figure it out for the globe, they would have missed the moment. And so we use that kind of go then grow mentality a lot.
I think that's so fascinating, and it's really inspirational too, because I know probably many of us, we are stuck in that rhythm of, you need to get 10 layers of approval, and there's so many meetings and conversations. So it's like really amazing to see that you guys are so nimble and flexible as it comes to launching some of these ideas and to see which ones take off. So I think it's pretty great. And I know as a mom of 2 with, little boys, puzzles were a big hit in our household, especially during the pandemic, although I can't really get them to sit for more than 5 minutes, but you know how it is. But you mentioned those great points on how to get great work, but I'd love to know a little bit more, and if you could dig deeper into like that collaboration piece, which you were starting to talk about, where it's like, less meetings, but can you go a little bit further into that?
Sure. So a couple other just kind of simple lessons and principles that we follow on the Heinz brand and at Kraft Heinz at large are this idea of get out of the boardroom and do it before somebody else does. And I think, many of us were trained in sort of this like formal boardroom environment, and there's always going to be a time and a place for that where formality is important. I do think you have to figure out, though, like where formality starts to get in the way of great work. And we've started to build, I think, more fluid relationships with our agency partners where, again, of course you have the formal boardroom meetings. That's never going to end. But you create space for conversation in between the meetings and create openness for, phone calls and text messages where your partners can reach out to you and share an idea when it's in its infancy. And there's less sort of formality and rigor behind it, and I actually think that helps us get to great work because we see more ideas and it becomes a more collaborative process and maybe a less intimidating process. So we really encourage folks to get out of the boardroom. And then I think the second piece to that is you have to be inclined to try to do something in some cases before somebody else does. So I mentioned the notion of speed earlier, and I think there's certainly moments in culture, especially if you have an objective of hack culture, earn attention, there's moments where you have to move, and you have to move quickly without all of the answers. And there's been many instances where, I'll give an example. I think it was summer of 2022. I don't know if you all remember this, but AI wasn't really part of the conversation, mainstream conversation. It wasn't this like colloquial thing that we talked about. And then all of a sudden it was. And AI started trending. It was in July of 2022 from what I remember. And then image generated AI or AI generated images became a conversation really quickly. And I remember I received a text from one of our creative partners with an idea, and he was like, I think we should move on this. I think it's a great way for us to bring to life It Has to Be Heinz. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. This makes a lot of sense. I have no idea what AI is, not really. And I don't know what my legal department is going to think of this. I'm going to be the least favorite marketer in the company with legal because of this. But what he said back to me was like, if you don't move on this basically within the next 24 hours, guarantee another big brand is going to do it, and we want to be first. And so that was a moment out of the boardroom over a text message. We went from a text to one quick phone call and presentation to pushing go to work in the world. And it was risky, and I didn't have very fun conversations with our legal department, but it ended up being worth it because it was a really impactful campaign, and we were the first brand to do anything with AI-generated images. So I have a quick video, if we have time, to bring that to life, and then keep moving.
That was great, Megan. It's so incredible. You should be really proud of that. Yes. I think we have only a couple of minutes left, so we really only have time for one more question. But I know from my perspective, thinking about trying to get things done in just a few minutes or a few hours sounds terrifying, right? So how did your organization really get on board with this, and especially legal? No, I'm teasing, but tell me a little bit more.
In the room. No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think maybe one final thought I'll leave everyone with. I felt fortunate to kind of come into an organization that really prioritized this idea of saying yes and building momentum by saying yes. I remember having a conversation with our chief creative consultant like 3 or 4 years ago. He was like, Megan, you have got to start finding more reasons to say yes than no. And that was a lesson that's like really stuck with me. And it's just a mentality, kind of a mindset shift as you're reviewing work and you're building work that really gets you to better work. And so I have just one, if we have time, I have one quick example of this from last year. I think maybe the still visual is on the screen. This was a campaign that we did called Ketchup Fraud. And I remember when one of our partners reached out to me about this idea, it was terrifying. And it was kind of one of those ideas that like punches you in the gut a little bit. And to be honest, if this came to my desk maybe 5 years ago, I probably would have found more reasons to say no than to say yes. But I carried that mindset with me, and we worked through it, and we have eventually decided like, this is a powerful enough insight. This is something that's real that people aren't talking about, let alone the brand that it's happening to. So we decided to lean in, and I think saying yes builds momentum. It builds your confidence, it builds your team's confidence, builds your agency's confidence. They're like a dog on the bone, and they just keep bringing ideas. And so, it's simple, but I think finding more reasons to say yes and no is really powerful.
I love that, and I think even just taking that into my personal life as well, say yes more than no, I think you'll go a long way. But yeah. Megan, I think this has been so inspirational, and I love your passion and everything that you've brought and shared with all of us today. So I just want to give you a round of applause. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.